Lockerbie bombing anniversary. On the 21st of December in 1988, the tranquil village of Lockerbie, which is situated in Scotland, became the epicenter of a calamity that took place all over the world. The terrorist bomb that went off on Pan Am Flight 103, which was a transatlantic flight that was traveling from London to New York, resulted in the deaths of all 259 passengers and crew members who were on board, in addition to 11 Lockerbie residents who were on the ground at the time of the explosion. The catastrophe, which caused shockwaves to be felt all over the world, is still regarded as one of the most lethal acts of terrorism in the history of aviation. A legacy of perseverance, justice, and pain that will last for generations to come has also been left behind. In the course of the Christmas season, Pan Am Flight 103 served as a regular aircraft that connected the United States of America and Europe. Because passengers were making their way back to their homes to enjoy the holidays with their family and friends, this aircraft consistently had a high volume of passengers. The Boeing 747-121, also referred to as the Clipper Maid of the Seas, departed London Heathrow at 6:25 p.m. on that specific day. This was after the completion of the first leg of its journey, which had begun in Frankfurt, Germany. Among the 243 passengers and 16 crew members who were on board, there were representatives from 21 different countries. There were a total of 190 passengers, the majority of whom were returning to the United States for the holidays on this particular flight. Students, merchants, holidaymakers, and extended families were among the other members of the passenger population. The incident took place at approximately 7:03 p.m., which was only 38 minutes after the flight had taken off. At a height of 31,000 feet, the airplane was traveling over the Scottish borders when it was struck by a terrible explosion that tore through the forward cargo hold of the aircraft. Subsequently, the detectives reached the conclusion that the device, which had been placed within a Toshiba tape player and had been packaged in a Samsonite suitcase, burst with a catastrophic effectiveness. The explosion caused the fuselage to be ripped apart, which ultimately led to the aircraft exploding while it was in the air. Significant portions of the plane's debris, which comprised its nose, wings, and tail, began falling toward the ground in a matter of seconds. These fragments included nose, wings, and tails. The force of the impact that was felt on the ground was extremely destructive. The falling debris at Lockerbie, which is a small market town with a population of around 4,000 people, entirely damaged several residential neighborhoods. Lockerbie is a town that is located in the United Kingdom. In the neighborhood of Sherwood Crescent, the heaviest component of the aircraft, which included the wings that were carrying tens of thousands of gallons of jet fuel, launched an assault on the community. Consequently, this resulted in a massive fire that consumed homes and created a crater that measured 155 feet in length and 30 feet in volume. Within a split second, entire families were obliterated from existence. 11 residents of Lockerbie were among the unfortunate individuals who lost their lives on that night, in addition to the 259 persons who were killed on board the plane. Extremely mind-boggling was the scope of the destruction that had occurred. On the other hand, despite the fact that they arrived quickly, emergency professionals, residents of the neighborhood, and law enforcement authorities were not able to deal with the magnitude of the disaster. Due to the fact that wreckage, personal objects, and human remains were strewn across an area that was more than 845 square miles in size, the town, which had been renowned in the past for its tranquility, was now a site of horrible desolation. Throughout the very harsh winter in Scotland, investigators and forensic teams worked diligently in order to retrieve evidence and identify the victims. This was a task that would take several months to complete in its entirety. People from all across the world reacted to the tragedy almost soon after it occurred. There were relatives from all over the world that traveled to Lockerbie in order to receive the remains of their loved ones. These families transported the bodies back to Lockerbie themselves. There were memorial services held in a number of different nations, and individuals from all around the world sent their condolences and offered their praise. The bombing struck a particularly emotional chord in the United States of America due to the fact that a considerable proportion of the passengers of the plane were nationals of that country. 35 students who had just recently returned home from studying abroad were among those who perished at Syracuse University in New York, which was one of the places where the most catastrophic impacts were felt. The university continues to memorialize their memories by conducting a Remembrance Week each year. This is because their passing has become an enduring representation of the tragedy that occurred. One of the most difficult and high-profile investigations in the history of the world was the one that was conducted to investigate the bombing. There were representatives from Scotland, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and aviation professionals from all over the world who participated in this investigation, As well as a Toshiba cassette recorder, the detectives were able to trace pieces of the bag and the device to a specific kind of plastic explosive known as Semtex. Additionally, they were able to follow the device to its source. The utilization of laborious effort was the means by which this was done. The bags had been carried aboard a feeder airplane that was located off the coast of Malta, which was the location where these clues were supposed to be delivered. The investigation ultimately resulted in the indictment of 2 Libyan nationals, Abdelbasset al-Megrahi and Lamin Khalifa Fima, who were charged with laying the bomb in 1991. Both of these individuals were charged with the crime. Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya, initially was unwilling to extradite the accused, which led to a diplomatic standoff that lasted for years and international sanctions. Despite the fact that Gaddafi was under a great deal of pressure in 1999, he ultimately made the decision to hand over the men so that they might be tried in line with Scottish law in a neutral location in the Netherlands. Fima, on the other hand, was found not guilty of the allegations of mass murder and sentenced to life in prison in 2001. He was sentenced to life in prison. It was determined that Abdelbasset al-Megrahi was responsible for the offenses. In spite of the fact that the trial was hailed as a victory for justice, it did not provide answers to all of the questions that were directed toward it. These questions included the degree to which Libya was involved in the attack, as well as the question of whether or not additional people were involved in the attack. The release of al-Megrahi in 2009 on humanitarian grounds due to the fact that he was suffering from terminal cancer created controversy and revived sentiments surrounding the case. The release was justified on humanitarian grounds. The bombing that took place at Lockerbie had a tremendous impact on both the security of the aviation industry and the actions of terrorists. In the aftermath of the occurrence, governments and airlines all over the world made significant modifications to the security procedures that they had previously put into place. There was a more severe control over the handling of baggage as a result of the need that all checked baggage be matched with a passenger who has completed the verification process. The technology that is used to detect explosives has been enhanced, and the sharing of intelligence between countries has been strengthened in order to avoid attacks of a similar sort from occurring in the future. There is also the fact that the tragedy brought to light the vulnerability of civilian airplanes to acts of terrorism, which is a lesson that continues to have an impact on policy despite the passage of time. The events that took place on December 21, 1988 will long be the defining moment in the history of Lockerbie. This is a chapter that will reside in the annals of history forever. Due to the fact that it has been thrust into the spotlight on a global scale, the town that was once peaceful has become a place of pilgrimage for the relatives of the victims, as well as for those who are interested in appreciating the human cost of terrorism. Arlington National Cemetery, located in the United States of America, is home to both the Lockerbie Memorial Garden and the Lockerbie Air Disaster Memorial. Both of these memorials are well worth seeing. Additionally, memorials have been created in order to pay honor to the persons who have died away. There are festivities that take place on the anniversary of the bombing, which takes place once a year to ensure that the memory of those who were slain is preserved. The bombing of Lockerbie is more than simply a historical event. It is also a story of the capacity to persevere in the face of adversity and the profound anguish that it caused. As the relatives of the 270 people who were slain continue to feel the sorrow of that night, they also continue to feel their devotion to obtaining answers and being held accountable for their actions. Additionally, the incident serves as a clear reminder to the international community of the devastating repercussions that can follow from terrorist attacks, as well as the ongoing requirement for vigilance, justice, and compassion from the rest of the world. Although it has been more than 3 decades since that awful December night, the memories of that night continue to bring people together in contemplation and determination, ensuring that the lives that were lost will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.